I recently seen one like maybe 2 weeks ago from a YouTuber named Jessica Kent. Y'all should go follow her. Hi guys, I'm very excited to make this video here. I've been wanting to make one of these for the longest, ever since I believe Draw My Life videos came out. My little nephew showed me one of them and I thought it was a cool concept, so I always thought that I wanted to do one. Let's fast forward a year or so later, I still had never really even went back to YouTube and never did one. I recently seen one like maybe 2 weeks ago from a YouTuber named Jessica Kent. Y'all should go follow her if you don't already. She has some deep, like real stories to tell, and she's really helping a lot of people over there. So I watched her Draw My Life video, and I had a lot in common with her that I see stemming from kind of being like an outcast and things like that. So I was really inspired to go ahead and finally do my own Draw My Life. I figured that would be a great way to introduce myself. You know, my YouTube is kind of new. I mean, it is, but it isn't new. I've been on YouTube forever, really since like 2008. I had an old YouTube and then I restarted again in 2013 and kind of just, you know, went back and forth a couple of times, random years posting stuff. But this year I'm relaunching it. So I'm going to call it a baby channel. Well, I know it's a baby channel because I hardly got any subscribers. I hardly got any, you know, likes or shares or anything, which is cool. Everything is a learning and growing process. So hopefully soon that will change. If you support your girl, please subscribe. Please tell others about what I'm doing. And here we are. Let's go get into my Draw My Life. Okay, the first frame, it shows my mom and my dad. My mother is from Chicago, Illinois, and my father is from Lexington, Mississippi. They met because my dad, the end thing at that time was to move from the South to north somewhere or Midwest, just get out of the South. So he said that was the thing that everyone did. So he moved to Chicago. Now, he met my mother at a restaurant called Pine Valley. My aunt owns a restaurant still in Chicago named Pine Valley, and it is on the west side of Chicago. And the best food you ever are gonna have, like the homemade hamburgers and just, oh my gosh, that food is so great. If you are in Chicago area, I'm sure you know of Pine Valley. But anyway, so my mother was a waitress at Pine Valley. I think all my aunts worked at Pine Valley as well. I've heard everybody from my mother's side of the family actually went and got a job at Pine Valley. So my dad meets my mother there. I don't quite know that whole story, but I do know mom told me a while back, a long time ago, I think I was a teenager, that my dad had put that song Too Hot on the jukebox and he played that for her, and I guess that was a wrap. I don't know the whole story, but that's where they met. And I remember my mother telling me that my dad was like, hey, let's go get married. And my mother was like, yeah, okay, let's go get married. And they got married. All right, here is frame 2, just married. That's my mother and my father. And 1 year later, 1981, here I come. I was cute. I had those fat cheeks. They call them jaws in Chicago. And everybody used to pinch my jaws. I kind of still got them, the little chubby cheeks. And my mom just said everybody would randomly just come up and pinch my cheeks. They stayed red. Okay, so a little while later, maybe a few years, I don't know, it's been so long ago, we packed up the truck and moved to Florida. I kind of vaguely remember that road trip. I just remember being in the back of a big rig. And I think me and my mother rode in the back, and my dad drove us from Chicago to Florida. When we moved to Florida, we started out living on Marco Island. and then later moved to Sarasota. Then a little bit after that, we moved to Orlando in the Oak Ridge area, and later we ended up moving to, now they call that Crime Hills. Okay, so we moved to Florida, and I would say a couple years after moving to Florida, all of a sudden my mother was like, "Oh, you have a sister coming." And I'm like, "A sister coming? Are you pregnant?" And she was like, "No, I had a ready-made sister." I did not know that. My big sister. She packed up, came from Chicago, and moved with us. My sister lived with us from age, I believe, 9 until she turned 18. I love my sister. Anyways, in Orlando, at that time, there was not much to do. Not at all. It was like really country-like. There were dirt roads everywhere. And it wasn't much modernness to it, actually. If you come to Orlando now, it is so completely different. And really, it wasn't too much for us to do. And our neighborhood was barely developed. So I remember me and my sister going like right behind my house, like a couple houses down, they had these big old sand hills. And we would go pick watermelons from out there, and then we'd come in the house, we made mud pies, and we would play different games as we washed dishes and stuff, like we were in a restaurant. And I vaguely remember, like, we used to pretend Whoopi Goldberg came to the restaurant, and she was just being like the most, sending back the mud pies and everything. But it was a good time growing up. I loved my Cabbage Patch dolls. I had dolls everywhere. Everywhere I went, I made my dad like bring every single doll that I had with me. Wherever we went, he always had an armful of dolls. It's a Cadillac. I graduated in 1999, class of 1999. I remember that was when we would play that Prince song out. Tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999. I actually think Prince meant 2019, but we ain't gonna get into that. So that was a good time in life. I vaguely remember, well, I didn't go to school, elementary school in Orlando. I went to school in an outside city called Ocoee. It was a little bit further outside of Orlando. And what I remember about Ocoee, it was pretty good. It was like, random, however elementary school is. But the thing that really stood out for elementary school for me is I was one of the only black kids in the school. My older cousin, he was in a couple grades higher than me, so he attended the school as well. But then when he left, it was like one other guy, and his name was Michael. I remember that. And besides that, I think a little later, as it was almost time for me to leave, it may have been one or two other black kids. I'm not sure. But I remember it was really only like me and the other guy, Michael. And I also remember like Black History Month. Like everybody would look at me like I knew what was going on. I was trying to learn just like everybody else. Like I didn't know nothing about this. And now what's so funny is one time I went home and I was like, Mom, this girl called me black. And she was like, Keita, you are black. And I said, no, I'm not. I am brown. And you're yellow. And they're pink. And she was like, no, Keita, you are black. Like, I didn't even know I was black until they told me I was black. That's crazy. But I mean, we still got along and this and that. Now, it was some things like they used to really like make fun of my hair back then. Like in Chicago, you call them French braid. I would get my hair French braided. Down here, we call it cornrows. We would get cornrows in our hair. So back then, nobody really wore that but African Americans. And they used to make fun of me and be like, oh, she got them snakes in her hair or worms in her hair. And I remember one time where I was like, Mom, can I please take these French braids out my hair? And she was like, why, Keita? And I was like, the kids at school keep making fun of me and talking about how it's so amazing because they're trying to get through the maze and all kinds of stuff. And she was like, no, Keita, just wait. So I could not wait. At that time, like now, I think it is kind of a style, but I had like it was a couple braids I could not get out, so I completely just cut my whole side of my hair down to where there was nothing there. Now, that's all cool, but back then they didn't have hair like that. And it was like I would rather walk around looking like that than to have those French braids in my hair because the kids just would not let up. But what is so crazy now to me is all ethnicities are wearing French braids or cornrows or whatever, what have you. And it's like, it just wasn't like that back then. I would have been more, accepted if that was the case, you know, how it is now if it was like that back then. Okay, so moving along. Yeah, so anyway, we got along pretty good. I was a little rock and roll kid and pop kid, and like we listened to that type of music. So I didn't know, like, in middle school, it was a whole culture shock because my mother had put me in a all black school called Robbinswood. They actually nicknamed it Robin's Hood, which is crazy. But yeah, I went to Robbinswood, and that's when I really first heard of hip hop. And it's so crazy. Like when I heard about it, really the first ones that I fell in love with was Crisscross. They were so cute. So I was just into the music because they were cute as ever. And then after that, it was Snoop Dogg. Oh my God. The first time I heard that 1, 2, 3 into the 4, Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door. Yeah. Man, do you know I fell in love with hip hop right then. I told my aunt right then I was going to be a rapper. That's crazy. Way back. But anyway, so in middle school it started out pretty good, but the problem was I was a skateboard kid, and at the time I did not have my own skateboard, so I thought I was gonna make my own skateboard. I was always making stuff, like even back before when I was a little girl. I used to make my own Barbie houses because, well, really, we didn't have Barbies, we had gym dolls. Anybody remember gym dolls? If you do, give me that red emoji heart. You remember Jim, like Jim and the holograms? Girl. Anyways, so we had our gym dolls. And I used to make doll houses for them, like out of cereal boxes. And I would put little toilets in there. I would cut up the little styrofoam cups, and I'll make a toilet. My dad was a construction worker, so I would get old pieces of rug and stuff and tile, and like their houses were they was nice. And I guess I get it from my dad and my uncle because they were like my uncle, oh my gosh, he was an inventor, and he also was like a master construction worker. My dad, he is so awesome. Like he built like a whole house on top of our house. Like we have the biggest house in the neighborhood because he built all of that. And that's kind of how we ended up in Orlando, because like I said, Orlando was undeveloped. So him and my uncle and the whole family came down here, and they actually helped develop most of Orlando. My dad and my uncle, they worked on a building I remember called Peabody. I don't know what it's called now, but International Drive, they did a lot of work out there, downtown Orlando. He's done work for Shaquille O'Neal. He's also done work on the show Extreme Home Makeover. I think I'm saying that right. Extreme Home Makeover. I believe that's it. Yeah, like he did a lot. He is so awesome. So I get I think I get that creative side from his side of the family. So anyways, I made my own skateboard. And I do have a story time. It's not really a story time. It's like an audio book that I made called Prison Wife Chronicles that will be linked. You can go ahead and check that out. It's pretty good. I'm an awesome writer. I hate to toot like my own horn, but when I do stuff good, like I like to celebrate that because I'm always telling you what I do wrong. Like I do a lot wrong and it's a lot of stuff I just cannot get right. So if I have no problem telling you that, then I think is I should also tell you what I do well, because what I do well, I know I do well, and it's not none of me. It's just gifts that I have. So I made my own skateboard out of like some roller skates, and I think I strapped like an old wagon or something to it. Anyways, I was playing with my sister, pushing her on the skateboard, and the skate part of the skateboard got stuck in a crack in the sidewalk. I went flying across her head and slid across the concrete. I had scraped off the whole left side of my face. I had scraped my chest. I had scrapes on my hands. I knocked my front tooth out. It was crazy. And I thought it was cool. I was a tomboy. I'm good. I slapped a little band-aid on it. But the problem was when I went to school. Like, girl, middle schoolers are the worst. Like, you gotta have yourself together, or in middle school they are going to roast you. Like, they really just rolled me, and I was bullied. I was made fun of. When I would be at the bus stop, like, they would throw rocks at me, and then they finally gave me a nickname, Scarface. It was so crazy. So it was like, I hated school at that point. I could not stand school. I loved when it was summertime and I just did not have to go to school, because it was like torture. And when I was not in school, I would just stay up in my room like for hours, days on end, just up in my room. And I just hated to come out. That was a very lonely time in my life. I used to all the time try to cover it with makeup, but then my dad would trip because he wouldn't allow me to wear makeup. It was just so much. And what I could not cover with makeup, I would just try to either keep my hands across my face as much as I can, or if I could kind of get my hair to comb across my face and kind of hide the scars, whatever I could do to try to hide it. I went through all kinds of fade creams and I tried everything, but those scars just would not go away. So this slide, you see, I just went through a lot of sadness, depression, and isolation. That happened really 6th grade through 9th grade. So 9th grade, you go to the 9th grade center. And the reason it carried to 9th grade, it was a whole different school. But that main bully that I had actually went to the same 9th grade center as me. So that's how it kind of carried along. The only thing during that time that people actually would talk to me and even show any type of affection towards me is when they seen that I can draw. They was like, oh, you that girl that can draw. Draw me to, oh, you that girl that can draw. Like, that was my only claim to fame. That was my only thing that I had to show that I was still beautiful, was my artwork. Well, as I got to high school and got out of the 9th grade, then back then we had the 10th, 11th, and 12th at a regular school, and they called it the main campus. I went to West Orange High School. So at West Orange, it was a mix of like everybody. They had all kinds of races there, which was cool. So it was like we just had our own friends, and like I had all types of friends, and I liked it, that like being, around everybody and all different personalities and walks of life and stuff like that. But during this time, I kind of got out of that Scarface phase. When that girl finally left and did not come to that main campus, like, I started, everything changed. But there was this one time, okay, I remember my mom telling me that we had went to Chicago to stay for the summer. And I was the baggy jeans, big hats, and like that was TLC. Like I wanted to be just like them. Aaliyah was kind of like that as well. So, we all dressed like tomboys. So when I got there, my aunt, I'm gonna shout you out, Sabrina. Anyways, my aunt and my grandmother was like, what in the world you got on? I had on these big old, now other people I think call them tennis shoes, but in Chicago they call them gym shoes. I had on these big old floppy gym shoes, and it was like, they was like, So they did this whole makeover. And that's when I started wearing dresses. I started painting my nails, carrying purses. Like I cried before when I had to carry a purse. I was like, I cannot be seen with this purse. But it was like when I seen myself in the mirror, I actually kind of seen beauty. And I was like, wow, I got a little shape and everything. And that's where my name Cadillac comes from. My grandmother, she was like, look at you, look like an old school Cadillac. Because you know how the back of the old school Cadillac stick out? Yeah, I had a little shape and everything back then. And I remember when I got off the plane and came back to Orlando, my mom was like, you're not the same girl that I put on that plane. So, anyways, that was the girl that went into high school. So it was so crazy. Some of the people that taunted me now liked me. And I'm like, that's how, and actually, I believe that time in my life, that's what made me so down to earth, because I realized it is not what's on the outside, it is always what's on the inside of a person that matters. I was the same person, whether I was Scarface or whether I was this new Keita. Like, but people treated me differently. That's so crazy. So I graduated in 1999, class of 1999. I remember that was when we would play that Prince song out. Tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999. I actually think Prince meant 2019, but we ain't gonna get into that. So I graduated, and I do remember on the day of my graduation, I had a job interview. I had got my first job interview at a grocery store. So even back then, I was always rushing, rushing, rushing. I had my job interview, then I had to go get ready, and then I had my high school graduation. After graduating, oh my God, that was like the best time of my life. Like, though there's these couple years that you can always look back and be like, ooh, that was my life. I was getting my life then. And I would say it was 1996, that year I went to stay with my grandmother. And then I would say 1999, that was the year I was getting my life. I was out in the club. We were like church kids. We couldn't go nowhere. If it wasn't school or church, they didn't let me go. And my dad was like, you don't need to hang out at no mall. We didn't go to no mall. But that was because, he grew up in the country. Like, they didn't even have a mall around there. But yeah, so I had to let loose. Like, I was going out, people was accepting me, and I was just having fun. It was a whole new world with people that didn't know who I used to be. So I started college in year 2000, and I remember I really didn't even want to go to college. My daughter was born in June, so in August I get this call, and it's Marcello, and he's like, this red band on my arm, like he's crying. I'm like, red band? What's a red band? He's like, they got this red band on my arm. And I'm like, what is it? Like, I don't understand. When I asked him, what does the red band say? He said, it says life or death. Okay, so we get to year 2000. Year 2000, I went to college. And to be honest with you, I didn't even want to go to college. I wanted to go to hair school. All through high school, I kind of did all the girls' hair. I was a great braider. I used to braid and braid really fast. And my mom was like, No, because people are not going to always get their hair done, and that's not stable. So you need to go to college. And so back then, I said, okay, well, the only thing I'm good at is art. So I would go for something that they call commercial art back then. Now I actually think commercial art is more so like what graphic design is. But back in the day, they called it commercial art. So I went to my guidance counselor and they were like, yeah, so you could do commercial art if you're willing to move to California. And I'm like, no, I don't want to move to California. So they're like, well, there's no industry for commercial art here in Orlando. Go figure. Anyways, I was like, well, just give me some classes and I'll just, I didn't even know what I wanted to be. I wasn't good at anything really, to be honest with you, besides art. So I didn't know what to do or anything. So I kind of just was like, just give me some classes, so that my mother will know that I'm in college. And I really don't know what I was doing, to be honest. I had changed my major several times. I think I was a legal secretary, which that came a little bit later when I had, I was trying to get my foot in the door with lawyers and stuff. So hopefully they could, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but you may already know so that they can help my daughter's father out and stuff. So I did that. When I was last leaving college, they said I was enrolled in billing and coding. I don't even know why would I sign up for that. I'm not that's not even me at all. So I don't know what I was doing in college. So that year in 2000, I believe it was about summertime. It was somewhere around summer. No, actually, I think it was May something. I don't know. Oh, I wish I really knew, but I don't know. So, anyways, I was going with this guy and like he was just way too much. Like he had all these beepers. He was the guy back then. But it was crazy. Found out he had other girls and stuff. And I think I went with another guy and it was the same thing. So I was just like, forget this. I don't want nobody. I don't want to be with anybody. So I was just chilling, going to the club and stuff, having my fun. And my cousin had a girlfriend and she was like, I don't know, she met me one time. I had to be like their chaperone on their date. So I went on the date with them and she tried to hook me up with her uncle or something. And come to find out, her uncle, when I went over to his house, like after the little date that we had, he had somebody. Like he had a girlfriend, a whole girlfriend. Okay, that's fine, whatever. She tried to hook me up with some other guy from her church. And I'm like, look, girl, I don't want nobody. Like, I'm not trying to talk to nobody. Just let me, live my life, play around in college, work my little job that I loved, and, just be. So she tries to hook me up a third time. And she's like, girl, it's this guy, my cousin. He wants to talk to you. And I'm like, why would your cousin want to talk to me? Like, that makes no sense. And she was like, yeah, girl, he want to talk to you. I said, well, he don't know what I look like. That's silly. That's crazy. That don't make no type of sense. And she was like, okay, yeah, you're right. Just come on and pick me up. And I'll just ride home with you. So I go to pick her up. And homegirl thought she was slick. She had someone sitting out on the car outside. And when I pulled up, it was this guy there. And I'm like, okay, so I thought I was just picking you up. And I told you I did not want to meet anybody. And she was like, oh, yeah, I know. Just talk to him. I was like, no, I honestly don't want to talk to anybody. So end up, she leaves. No. He leaves and goes inside the house. I said, oh, girl, that's it. This boy don't like me. I'm finna leave. I'm getting in my car and going. He don't like me. He going back inside the house. And she's like, no. Okay, she said, just exchange phone numbers. And, y'all exchange phone numbers and y'all could talk later. I said, okay, whatever. And I was not expecting him to call it off. Like, who cared? I had a whole, back then, I used to come home. I worked in a grocery store. Oh, I love that job. And my little coupon bag used to be filled with phone numbers. Like it was just random. Like I can call whoever I wanted to. I didn't really, get down like that. We used to just back then. I know they don't do that now, but we used to just go out to eat, have fun, and stuff like that. So I didn't need him. Like really? And I don't need no relationship if guys finna be cheating and stuff. So I was good. He calls me. And when he calls, he's like, he's like really sweet. And just being around him, I noticed how he treated his grandmother. He was so like, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and opening doors for me. And I'm like, this is weird as I don't know what. Because I ain't never had nobody ever treat me like that, honestly. I had a guy, a gentleman, that he was cool, but this other guy was like overboard. Like I never really had that. So I didn't understand it. And we ended up just, well, I kept telling him I was only going to be his friend. And he was like, please, like, basically, at that time, I had like three boyfriends. Well, friends, we'll call them friends. I had like three friends, and I would tell him he was my friend. And like, we'll hang out, chill. And before I left him, like, I would be trying to get him dap. He was like, no, I want a hug. And I said, okay, homeboy, and give him dap. We'll fist bump. So he would be like, you gonna be my girlfriend? And I'm like, no, I'm not trying to be with nobody. I said, and I used to joke, oh, I guess this bite me in my behind for all that joking. I used to say, no, I'm gonna be single forever and I'll just get me somebody like to retire with. And maybe that came to pass because I used to say that. But I was for real, like I didn't need to be tied down. So he said he was going to ask me one more time. And if I tell him no, then no meant no. And he asked, and that time I said, yeah. Crazy. I said, yeah. And that was the end of it. From that day, oh my gosh, I was in love with him, but I couldn't show him that because you show a man you love him, but then he got like all range to do whatever he want at that point. So I had to be tough, So we get to 2001, and that's when I had my little baby girl. Crazy. And his reaction, like I thought he was gonna be like upset, like, no, that ain't mine or this and that. Even though I wasn't with nobody, I wasn't even into doing stuff like that. I don't even know how we got to that point. So it was so crazy. We used to take long walks around the neighborhood, and I told him, and when I told him, he like knelt down right there, and it was like this big smile on his face. He was like, I'm gonna be a father. And I was like, yeah. And he just started rubbing my stomach, and like I was like, wow, okay, this is completely not what I expected at all. Not at all. So, we were hard down in love. Like it felt like, shoo, I just couldn't live without him. And I felt like he felt the same way too, because, and then we fell in love at a Cash Money concert. That is so crazy. But that story there, I'll probably tell in depth what happened there in another story. But yeah, so we fell in love. And I had been in love before, but this was just so different. So I had my daughter in 2001, and she was a big baby. I had so much heartburn because she had so much hair. And I mean, I used to just sit up, like when I was pregnant with her, I would just sit up, and I love Lifetime movies and stuff. Not eat my chips and salsa because that was my thing. I went through a whole bag of chips and salsa every single day, and boiled eggs. So ended up, she was coming late. We were way past due. And I'm like, I had just ate me a big old bag of chips and salsa, and the doctor gives me a call. And it's like almost maybe like 9 or 10 ish at night. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, "Oh, I'm such and such from the hospital. You need to come in and deliver your baby." I'm like, "Can we wait till the morning?" And he's like, "No, your blood pressure is like super high. And if you don't get here, you could be in danger, and your child could be in danger as well." And he was like, "We have been trying to contact you like all day long, but you weren't answering the phone." And that day, that was a beautiful day. My mother had took me to her job with my loved one, Marcello. Oh, man, we and my little sisters. It was my little sisters, it was my mom, it was me, and we just all went to her job. Then we went to the mall and had dinner. I mean, lunch, I'm sorry. We had lunch together, and it was perfect. And this guy, oh my gosh, he was so perfect. He said he was going to be at every single doctor's appointment. Do you know, one day I had left him. I had went on because I thought he didn't call and this and that. Halfway down, getting to the driving to the doctor's appointment, he's on. I see him on the side of freaking road, waving his arms back and forth. Runs down my car, and he's like, "Keita, you left me." I'm like, "I left you. I didn't know you were going. I didn't even know you remembered the date." And like when the doctor handed me the sonograms, he was like, excuse me, where's my sonograms? I'm the like, I mean, you just could not want any more. You could not find no one more perfect than he was. So had my daughter, and everything was so nice after we had her and she was born. I just had all this overwhelming just love. And I didn't know what I was going to do as a new mother. I had helped raise my little sisters, but I didn't know about being a mother. It's always different when the child is your own. But I did know that that child came first. No matter what, that child comes first. I would say about 2 months later, because it was in August. My daughter was born in June. So in August, I get this call, and it's Marcello. And he's like, "This red band on my arm," like he's crying. I'm like, "Red band? What's a red band?" He's like, "They got this red band on my arm." And I'm like, "What is it?" Like, I don't understand. When I asked him, "What does the red band say?" He said, "It says life or death." And I'm like, "What? What are you talking about? Where are you?" And that's when he told me he was in jail. Oh my God. And that's where this roller coaster ride for me really began at that moment. Ended up, he was able to get out on bond. His bond was really high, but I'll tell that story in another, story time or something. But I actually was able to bond him out, and he was on house arrest the first year of my daughter's life. And he was such a great father. Like, I used to go to work. It was hard for him to find work at that time because he had just got out of jail. But we used to go like hitting the pavement. I wasn't really happy at my job anymore, so I wanted a better job. And he was trying to find a job. So we used to spend so much time just looking for jobs. And we tried everything. Like, we tried these get rich quick schemes, like everything. The get rich quick realtor stuff. Then it was the envelope stuffing. We tried that, where they pay you for stuffing so many envelopes. Then it was this thing where you make these little miniature jewelry boxes for doll houses, and for each one you complete, they would give you this kit, and each one you complete, you would get paid for it. And we just tried everything, everything we could think of. And nothing too much kicked off. Eventually, he started working construction with my dad, like closer to the time that he went to jail. Anyway, he goes to court, and that's also another story time. He goes to court. We're thinking, he's going to get through this, and he doesn't. The judge gives him 40 years. He does have 6 charges. They ran concurrently. So he has to do a 40-year sentence, and he's serving for all of the charges at the same time. He had no priors. He had no. It was just so crazy. Like, this came from nowhere. We were just planning to get married, have more kids. We both were going to be successful. I was going to finish college finally. And the whole coin just flipped to the other side. So I left the stripper, idea out but shoot, I probably could have got up that 10,000 like quick. He goes to court. We're thinking, he's going to get through this. And he doesn't. The judge gives him 40 years. He does have six charges. They ran concurrently. So he has to do a 40-year sentence, and he's serving for all of the charges at the same time. He had no priors. He had no. It was just so crazy. Like, this came from nowhere. We were just planning to get married, have more kids. We both were going to be successful. I was going to finish college finally. And the whole coin just flipped to the other side. Like, it was like, no, you're on this path now. Like, it made no sense to me. When he went to prison, I decided by any means necessary, because I wanted to pay for him an appeal. Like, no, this can't be. Like, something went wrong, something, somewhere. This cannot be 40 years. We were 19 and 20. Do you know how old we would be in 40 years? Yeah, of course you know, because I'm almost there now. But back then I was young, and my daughter was only 9 months. And I remember she would go visit him. Like, she knew him because he was the babysitter. Like, he would stay home all day long with her. He would try to comb my hair. He fed her. Like, he was so in love with her, his child. Like, he loved this child to death. And when he did finally get a job, when he did, he was the one that provided like everything, and he paid for the daycare, and he paid for all of her. She was a little greedy baby, so all her extra formula, and he paid for. We didn't have insurance on her yet, so every time we had to take her to the doctor, he paid like out of pocket. Like, that was all him. So when he was gone, I was left like, what the heck am I gonna do? Like, he actually supports us. Like, I don't know what to do now. So by any means necessary, we was finna get him home. So I started out, I was like, okay, well, I do hair. Maybe I could do so many heads of hair and raise up money, because it was then I needed $10,000 to get him an appeal, to pay for an appeal lawyer. So I was like, I can get that 10 grand. I'm going to just, do this much hair. And I was doing the math and everything. And I was doing hair that wasn't working out. So then I was like, girl, I'm going to strip. I hate to do this, but I'm just going to have to strip to make this money. I can make it real quick, and I'll never look back. I won't do it no more. I just get his money to get his appeal lawyer, and we'll be good. But I bought my little stripper outfits and my heels and stuff. Now, this is crazy. I had a body back then, like, ain't no playing. That's why they called me Cadillac, cause I had some booty in the back. But I was still shy. I still had that Scarface mentality though. And I used to call up the club, and I was like, yeah, so how do you audition? And it was like, you got to come down here and you have to do like a private audition. And that scared the heck out of me. But I was like, I could do it, because I'm doing this for Bay. Like, we gotta get Bay home. So I would practice and practice in front of my mirror. I had my little clothes on, my little outfits, furry outfits. It was crazy. My little clear stripper heels. And I would practice, and then I would drive down to the club, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna audition today. And I couldn't go in. I would just circle the building, and then I'd go back home. And I'm like, no, okay, that's because I wasn't ready. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna get it, and I'll make a better routine, and then I'll drive down there and I'll circle the building. I'm like, I can't go. I could not go in and do the audition. So I was like, well, I guess this just ain't me. This ain't gonna happen. So I left the stripper, idea out but shoot, I probably could have got up that 10,000 like quick. So I was like, okay, you know what? Instead, let me go to hair school. At that time, I had, ended up getting put out of college. So I was like, I can do hair school. I've always been good at hair. If I can get paid the real, like what I should get paid for hair, then I could really make some money. So I went to hair school. I was really good at it. Like I always had the different, creative, wild hairstyles. Like, and the students, they would gather around me just to see what I was doing. Like I was always trying to do something new and cutting it. And I see a lot of stuff that they do today. Like honestly, I know I made that stuff up. Wasn't nobody doing that stuff. Like these people used to gather around me. And it was like when other people started doing it, it didn't excite me no more. I'm like, dang, other people doing this stuff. You know, so I was like a trendsetter with the hair. I ended up graduating from hair school in 2004. And after I graduated, I ended up having corporal tunnel. I passed state board with flying colors. I worked in a couple of salons, and the thing was when I would use the clippers, they would like jiggle so much that they would send like electric shocks through my hands, and it ended up I had severe corporal tunnel and nerve damage. So, needless to say, I wasn't able to do hair anymore. I had to go have surgery. I was only like 22 years old, and they were like, "You're too young to be going through the 22, 23." So ended up I had to stop doing hair. My daughter was a couple years old, and she was missing daddy, and I would have to take on these long road trips to go visit him. And this time was a whole lot of depression was in those early 2000s because all I did was miss him. All she did was miss him. And it was like, I felt like I opened this hole in her heart because I was still taking her to visitation. Like I'm introducing him into her life, and she wouldn't even know him if I didn't do that. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. I go back and forth like, did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? We don't know. We only human, and we do what we can do. So I was still determined. In hair school, when I did hair school, baby, I worked overnight. When I would get home, I would creep in the door, and I'm like, oh, please don't let the baby wake up. Let me get a couple hours of sleep. And like an hour later, that thing was woke. She was woke. And it wasn't until she took her nap that I got a little small nap, but then she was, back up. And finally, around 4 or 5 ish, when my mother came home, then, she would get the baby. But I was in cosmetology school, so around 6 o'clock, I had to be to school. So when I'm finally able to go to sleep, it's time to go to school. I would go to school all evening, and then after school, it was time to go clock back in overnight. And it was so many times that my daughter would just cry, like, Mommy, please don't go to school. She started talking a little bit. You gotta leave again, Mommy. You gotta leave again. And like that was way too much. It was like if he could only be here, none of us would be going through this. So I never gave up. I don't know how to give up. Oh, you just don't know how many times I want to give up. And I just don't know how to give up. So, y'all already know that Life Jennings story. And after meeting him, that's when Project Reach the World started formulating. And I thought I was going to be a rapper. I was really good at rapping. Like, not to begin with, but when we came towards the end of that, no, I was it. Like, honestly, I was it. But I had to leave hip hop, and that's in another story time. I'll link that down below. But I had to leave hip hop because I had a message, and with what they wanted me to do in hip hop, I couldn't spread my message. That would be too contradictory. Like, I can't be over here and then over there. But I know y'all gonna judge me because I just said I wanted to be a stripper, but you notice I couldn't do it because it's not in me. And I don't judge anybody that is out there stripping. I actually understand you. Like, honestly, I understand. But I just couldn't do it. I wasn't like bold enough to do it. So I ended up stopping rapping, and that was about maybe 2010 ish. See? And I'm like, oh my God, I felt like such a freaking failure. Like, I was leaving her, oversleeping and leaving her at school and stuff. And it was so crazy. Like, I wanted everybody to know I really am a good mother. Like, it was just too much on me. It was too much. So I ended up stopping rapping, and that was about maybe 2010 ish. I still would spit a verse every now and then. Like, I can't stop. I can't stop if I get a little melody in my head. So 2011 came, and that's when I actually found out that I was losing my eyesight. Well, I knew something was going on because I couldn't see that clearly. I knew I used to be able to see clear across the room, and then all of a sudden, like, I can't hardly see, like, right in front of my face or anything. And it had got to the point where I couldn't see my hands, like the texture of my hands. I couldn't see my feet. And even like being close to a mirror, I couldn't see my face that well. I'm like, I can't. And deep thoughts in my head used to be like, oh my gosh, one day I'm not going to be able to see my daughter's face. Like, that's what used to scare me, one day not being able to see her face and see what she looks like. So, but how I ended up, I knew something was happening, but I had went to several doctors, and they told me all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, you have to get a whole bunch of opinions. But I did try to get a whole bunch of opinions. I used to pay top dollar for all these different glasses, and I would get the glasses and then I can't see. And then the people didn't even want to give me a refund. So end up eventually, I had to go in and take an eye exam for my driver's license. When I took that eye exam, I failed. And they did not actually take my driver's license right away. What they ended up doing, they gave me an extension and they said, you have to see an eye doctor to resolve this. If you don't resolve it, then we're going to, permanently, suspend your license. So I got really scared because I'm like, I tried so many times to go to doctors. They keep telling me all this crazy stuff, and nobody knows what's wrong. They're telling me I have a lazy eye. They're telling me this. They're telling me I worked under fluorescent lights too long. And then one is telling me I damaged one eye. What did you do to damage your eye? Just don't do it to the other. And I'm like, I never got any answers. So this is how God actually saved me. Because let me tell you, he saved me many times. He take care of children and fools. Like, I'm not saying I'm a fool, but I done did some crazy foolish stuff, and he always watched over me. So my little sister, she was like, oh, well, you can go to my eye doctor. And I'm thinking in my head, yeah, what's the point? I done been to all these freaking doctors and ain't nobody ever been able to help me. So I sit down, the nurse looks and she's like, look at the little hot air balloon. And I said, okay, I look at the hot air balloon. And she's like, could you look at the hot air balloon? And I said, I am looking at the hot air balloon. And she's like, no, you're not. She goes and get a second nurse. Nurse is like, look at the little hot air balloon. And I'm like, I'm looking at the little hot air balloon. I see it. It's right there. I described it and everything. And she's like, you don't see it. She said, I see what you see in your eye and you don't see it. I'm like, oh my God. Now I know it was really blurry, but I seen this freaking hot air balloon. They go get the doctor. I'm like, oh, something's going on. The doctor sits down and he looks into my eyes and he's like, hmm. You know when they make them noises that you don't want to hear? You like, what? And he's like, oh, I got good news and bad news. Don't you love when you hear that from a doctor? I got good news and bad news. He's like, oh, you're going blind, but there's help because we have a contact that we can make for you. And I'm like, oh, huh? Like that was a lot to take in. But he was like, basically, that's when I found out I have this weird behind disease called keratoconus, where your cornea starts to protrude out so far that eventually it bursts. Imagine a boiled egg, how they point out, and if you squeeze them, keep putting pressure on them, eventually the side of the boil it will bust open. That's what's happening to my eyeballs. Both of them. One is far progressed. The left eye progressed. I see like bursts of light, some little circle shapes and stuff like that, but I don't see much out of that. I rely solely on my right eye with the contact. Without the contact, I am completely, I just see colors and shapes. I can make out some things. And being blind for a while and not having any solutions, like you come up with ways to get around things. Like I remember people's shapes, like their silhouettes and stuff. And I could see how the figure moves. Like people walk in different ways. And I was a cashier. Crazy. I was a cashier, but I had remembered the whole cash register. Now, I used to hope I was giving them the right change back, but my drawer always came out right because I knew where all the money went, like where each, money slot was. So that's how I was able to. And when I had to drive, if I like push my eye in a certain way, just a certain way, I can see. So the whole time I was driving, and I know this is dangerous, and I will never, ever, ever, ever do this again. Woo! But the whole time I was driving, I would just be pressing my eye down in that manner so that I can see. That's how I used to drive. And when I got them contacts, I wear hard contacts. I'm gonna tell you, they feel like Coke bottles, like glass just cutting across your eye. They hurt, they give you headaches and everything. But when I take them jokers out, I can't see. So I don't even want to be awake if I can't see. And so I leave them in as much as I can. I rock with them as much as I can, but sometimes them things will have you crying. So when I put that contact in the first time, and I could see. I hadn't seen in years. I looked at my hands. I seen how wrinkled the hands were getting. I seen my feet and I seen my face in the mirror. I was like, girl, am I really starting to get like dark circles under my eyes? Like, I didn't see that. I still thought I was cute. And I seen my daughter's face. Oh, I once was blind, but now I see. Ooh, that ain't never been more true. We get up to 2013. 2013, I was still working at that super center. It had been almost a decade, and I hated it, hated it, hated it. My daughter was a little older. I think by then she must have been like 12. So she was getting ready to go to middle school. And it wasn't as hard. Like with her going to school, like it was so difficult being, raising her alone. You know how it went when I was in hair school, but later, like when she was in elementary and stuff, it was like I would get off of work. And I would be like, come on, honey, let's get ready so that we can go to school and our mommy can go to sleep. And I had the most active child in the world. She did not want to just get ready. She did not. Like, she would be jumping around. I'm like, please, honey, come on, we got to get ready. We got to. And it was a challenge. And I would be so freaking sleepy. It was times that I overslept and she would be late to school. And then once I dropped her off, it was times that I overslept and kind of missed the little bus route, the little car loop. And they would take her back up to the office and I didn't show up. And they was like, ma'am, if you do this one more time, we are gonna, I think they call it truancy. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt like such a freaking failure. Like I was leaving her, oversleeping and leaving her at school and stuff. And it was so crazy. Like I wanted everybody to know I really am a good mother. Like it was just too much on me. It was too much. But I wanted everybody to know I really was a good mother. So when they told me that, I'm like, no. I started sleeping like in a chair, like, or whatever position I could sleep in that was so freaking uncomfortable that I only slept about 2 hours. So sometimes I used to go to the couch and I would kneel like I'm praying, and I literally slept like that, like kneeling on the couch, sleep, because I knew the minute my knees went to sleep, I would wake up. Or I would sleep sitting up in a chair because I could not oversleep and leave her anymore. It was so hard. Like, and if only he could have been here to help me. If only. So, back to 2013. I'm still at this super center. I feel like the biggest failure in freaking life. Like, honestly, I felt so low. How did I even end up here? My body's breaking down. I'm freaking blind. I didn't amount to nothing. I don't have much money. And he's not nowhere near coming home. So, this was like a really sad, depressing, like, if any of the other years weren't depressing, this was very depressing. So, I always loved music. And one day I was going to a Ice Cube concert. Oh, finally Ice Cube comes to Orlando. It's a Cadillac. I remember when she gave me a hug, the last time I hugged my mother, I was so sleepy. She woke me up early in the morning. And she was like, Kitty, give me a hug, just in case. But never did I think the in case would happen. She was coming home. So I always loved music. And one day I was going to a Ice Cube concert. Oh, finally Ice Cube comes to Orlando. And it was my birthday. My mother had said she was going to buy me the Ice Cube tickets, and everything was good. We were going out to eat, and I was like, let me stop by, the super center so that I could, you know, I wanted some contact solution because they only sell, they call it gas permeable contact solution. And like a lot of places stop selling it because not too many people use it. It's getting really hard for me to even find it. It's expensive as heck. But what it is it's like a contact solution that forms like a little booger. It feels like booger consistency. And it kind of cushions itself on your eye so that the contact doesn't hurt so much. So you have to soak the contacts in these little stuff to put the little booger there so it doesn't hurt. And I went in to go try to find that because I was barely able to find this stuff anymore. So we all go in. My cousin, my aunt, they're on scooters, the little electric carts, and I'm walking. and in front of me was like a row of buggies. And I'm like, okay, I'm walking, and I couldn't walk any further because the buggies were blocking me. So only thing came out my mouth was, "Could you?" And the next thing I know, I went from standing up as tall as I stand, 5'5", to boom, flat on my back. They had water everywhere, all over the floor. I completely slipped. I bust my head on the ground, and it was like my family just kept walking. They were still on their scooters, and the rest of them were walking in, and I couldn't move. Like when my head hit that ground, it was like I could see people. I seen people moving, and I wanted to say something. Like my hands were stuck, like up, like I was shot. Where my fingers were spread, my hands were up, and I couldn't move anything. I couldn't say anything. All I could do is see. And I thought, oh my God, I actually die on my birthday. Like that's what I thought I was dying. And maybe a couple minutes later, I was able to speak and my hands moved. And I was like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And I hurt my back. So I did not see Ice Cube. I didn't see Ice Cube. And ended up I ended up in the hospital at that time. So that was a whole like crazy thing. That company that I worked for was actually the same company that I went in another store on my day off, failed, but because it was the same company, and they ended up like writing me up and trying to fire me. So I was going to get fired. I was hurt. I ended up getting 3 herniated discs in my neck. Like, you ain't even got that many discs in your neck. You have like what? I don't know exactly what you got, about 7 or 8. I don't know. But I have 3 that are herniated. I had like 5 pinched nerves in my neck. Think about your neck. Like that is your the bottom of my back is messed up now too because I slipped the bottom disc, and I'm like, really? It gets no better. So ended up fired. Well, they claim that I quit, but why sit around and let somebody fire you? I went got up and found me another job, and I ended up working at a theme park. I am 30 something years old and working at a theme park. And I made way less money than I made. I lost my stock. I lost my 401k. I had several benefits. I lost my health insurance. I lost all of that. Was Ice Cube worth that? Yeah, he was. But I didn't get to see him. So 2015, my mother, she had went back to school and she finally graduated. She kept graduating, not finally graduating. This was her 3rd time graduating. This time it was with her master's, and she was just so excited. Everybody was excited for her, and it was just so much she was ready to do. Her dream was to be a professor, and her other dream was to get a franchise of Chick-fil-A. She wanted a Chick-fil-A for all her daughters to be able to work at so that they would never be out of a job. And that was her dream. That was her only dream after all that schooling. She graduated at age 53. She graduated. And we get to 2016. 2016, the beginning of the year, I went back to school, and I do have that in another story time, how I ended up going back to school. And I finally went back to school, and it was like all that other stuff I tried to do, the hair school, the rapping, the stripping and everything. Finally, I think this was the first time that I made my mama proud. Like, she was so happy to talk to me about homework and stuff. And she was like, Keita, I understand you, but as long as you did the best on your test you could do, then you're good. And it was crazy. And I remember when the first semester was ending, and I thought I had failed my final. And she was like, Keita, it's okay. And I was like, no, mom, it's not okay, and this and that. And I remember I had signed up for summer classes, and they had dropped me out of summer classes. And I'm like, mom, everything's not going right, and this is crazy. I can't do school and this and that. And it was like I wanted to tell her all the things that were going on. When she graduated, she wanted to get her health in order. So she had lost a lot of weight, like because she was diabetic, she had lost weight. She had got her degree, she was ready to start her business. And she went in for a routine surgery, and my mother never came home. Yep. And what is so crazy? Oh, I remember when she gave me a hug, the last time I hugged my mother, I was so sleepy. She woke me up early in the morning. And she was like, Kitty, give me a hug, just in case. But never did I think the in case would happen. She was coming home, and I go back to sleep. I wake up, and it's maybe around 10, 11. I'm wondering what's going on. Guess mom should be out of surgery by then. And finally, we get the word back saying from my dad that mom's not doing so good. I'm like, huh? Mom's not doing so good? Honestly, I think my mother passed that morning. They had lost her for a while. And she got back. Somehow they got her back. And she was in the hospital. And I sat there all day with her on my little laptop. I regret being on a stupid laptop. But I sat there with her all day. And my sister, she was there, but she went to go get clothes and stuff to come back, and she was gonna spend the night with mom. And I went to go to work because I had to go to sleep so I could go to work. Really? I went home and I told mom, I said, I love you, mom. I'll see you in the morning. I'll see you after work. And her last words to me was, I love you, Keita. Thank you for coming, and get home safe. If you knew those were your last words, if I knew that was my last hug, she probably wouldn't even made it to that freaking surgery. That's not how you hug your mama for the last time. That's not how you say bye for the last time. But that's how I had to say bye and hug her. I love you, mom. I'll see you later. 2016 at age 53. Crazy. It's a Cadillac. And her last words, she wrote a note. My mother used to write all the time. And the night before she went to the doctor, she wrote a letter. Anyways, Babe was still in jail. I had lost my mother. Looked like I was never, gonna have a family, because he's so far away. And my daughter's growing up, and it just looked like I was just gonna be alone. My life is to be alone. Something crazy. It and it's an honor, but I wish I never would have had to do it. I actually designed the graphics on my mother's headstone. Yeah, everyone thought that it would be best and it would be special instead of picking graphics that were like in the little catalog if I actually designed them. And I designed it. And her last words, she wrote a note. My mother used to write all the time. And the night before she went to the doctor, she wrote a letter. It said, my life is in his hands. Glory to God for the things that He has done for me. And I illustrated that on her headstone. I drew some hands and I drew the words, "My life is in His hands." And I got some little angels up there. And that was my last tribute to her. Woo, we finna skip the next couple years, but you already know what that was. Working at a theme park, running like crazy, and I worked at a theme park that has this big lake in the middle, and it was like at this time now I'm juggling college. My daughter, I'm trying to get her into college. She has her prom and graduation. She was a dual enrollment student and she was getting every type of certification. So it's like when I would get off of work, I would have to, at this time, I ended up working overnight, like later at the theme park. And I would get off, and instead of going to sleep, I had to go meet with her guidance counselors, or we had to be at maybe right before going to work, we would have to go to scholarship nights. Then she had her senior stuff, all her ceremonies, and like even her graduation. Like after her graduation, I had to go home and hit the books. I mean, I that whole time included of no sleep. So honestly, really, I haven't slept since I had my daughter. Since I had my daughter, I ain't got no sleep. Like I'm tired. I want to just get somewhere. Like y'all think sometimes that I'm just trying to be, successful because I just want money. I don't care about money. I don't care about money. I want my family back together and I just want a career. I could make the same thing I make doing that laundry. If I can draw and make that, I am good. And I don't make that much doing no laundry. But it would be something that didn't hurt the heck out of me, that didn't leave me hurting all over my body. And I'm good at it. That's all I want. I don't need to be famous. I don't need to. This whole YouTube that I'm starting is only because this is my last effort to try to put my family back together. He's already missed my daughter growing up. I mean, he's seen her growing up through visitations, but he missed the good part of her life. He missed the good part of our lives. So it's like, just, I won't dwell on that. But this is my last shot, last try. So we finally get to 2020. Year 2020. This is the year that everybody was looking forward to, isn't it? 2020, the year of clear vision, 2020 vision. Yes, we always looking for 2020. Okay, so let me tell you about how my 2020 started. 2020, I knew already when 2019 was ending out and I went on my Christmas vacation. I knew it. I knew when school started back, I was finna be. If you thought I didn't get no sleep, I was. I was never. These eyelids were never going to shut because I still was working overnight. Then I would come home. I would have like maybe 3.5 hours, and then I would have to go to internship at a church because you have to intern to get your degree. I would be all day at the internship. I did that like I think 2 times a week. It would be for 8 hours. So I come home from work at like 4 something in the morning. I get about 3.5 hours of sleep. I had to be to internship about 8 or 9 o'clock. And when I got off at 5, by the time I make it through traffic, it's almost 6. And at 8 o'clock, I had to be back to my night job. So I got a cat nap in between work and internship, and then another small cat nap in between internship and work. And there are times that those naps didn't work out, and I ended up staying up over 48 hours. Okay, we get to days off. Yay, finally some rest, right? No. This is when you do everything that has went lacking all week. This is when you do the laundry. This is when you pay the bill. This is when you everything that you did not do. This is the day you do it on your day off. Not to mention I work overnight. So on my night off, I already worked that morning. So I'm tired as I don't know what. So I would get off of work. I have like 3.5 hours. On my day off, I went to class. I would go to class for like 2 hours. Sometimes I stayed in the lab after. Once I just could not keep my eyes woke or my head up, when I got home, I was knocked the heck out for the rest of the day. By the time I'm waking up, it's like a good 10, 11 o'clock at night. And of course, the next day, I had to go back to work. So it's been a never ending cycle. Visitation day. Yes, I wish we could visit, but it's just been forever. I try not to think about it because we don't know when we're ever going to visit again at this rate. So things that bother me, I try my best to keep my mind off of them. But on visit day, which would be Friday, because of a riot that happened in the prison, he ended up going from a regular security prison to a maximum security prison. Isn't that great? Like, he was close and we used to visit him like every week. And then all of a sudden he went to a maximum prison, and I'm back on the road driving hours to go see him, 4 hours or so to go see him. And I'm like, how did I go backwards? When you get older, you're supposed to go forward. But for some reason, when I get older, I go backward. So visitation days, I am not going to miss visiting him. In the maximum security, at first we had to visit behind a glass window. And it brought flashbacks because the last time I visited behind a glass window was when he was in the county jail back then, a long time ago. They don't do that anymore. But when my daughter was a little baby, she used to visit him through the glass. And she would jump at the glass and she would be looking at him like, Daddy, why won't you get me? And she would just keep jumping at the glass. And she hadn't visited him like that in so long. We had face-to-face visits, and for years he had been right in the city, like a couple cities over from me, like maybe 30 minutes away. And now he's in maximum, no visits. At first we had to visit behind a glass window, and it brought flashbacks because the last time I visited behind a glass window was when he was in the county jail back then, a long time ago. They don't do that anymore. But when my daughter was a little baby, she used to visit him through the glass. And she would jump at the glass and she would be looking at him like, Daddy, why won't you get me? And she would just keep jumping at the glass. And she hadn't visited him like that in so long. We had face-to-face visits, and for years he had been right in the city, like a couple cities over from me, like maybe 30 minutes away. And now he's in maximum, no visits for almost a year. And when they finally did let us visit, it ended up being once a month behind a glass. Then it went down to twice a month behind a glass, which is really weird. And after that, it was, it was still every 2 weeks, but then it was face to face again. So honestly, I hadn't seen him, seeing him touch his hand or anything in like a good couple, 2.5 years or so. We just had got back our face-to-face visits, honestly, and now they're gone again because nobody's visiting, which is really sad. But that's how It is now, and I'm not going to think about that because that would take me, it's so scary to think that you won't see him anymore, like face to face. It'll just be emails and calls any random week because I really don't get calls that often. So, but that's where we are now. But when I could visit, I would get off of work. I would either in the parking lot of my job, I would, sit the seat back and maybe sleep a good 2 hours, 3 hours. Or, when it gets really cold, which ain't really too cold to everybody else, but I'm in Florida. So, when it gets about 50 degrees, 60 degrees, that's really cold to me. So when it gets really cold and I can't sleep in my car, and plus I got all these herniated discs and crap, everything's going to sleep and it's very uncomfortable sleeping in the car. I would go home and I would go back to that chair situation and sleep in a chair so that I don't, oversleep because it's very uncomfortable. And I jump up, go to visitation. I would drive about 3.5 hours to visitation, 3 hours. It depends on, how fast you're driving and stuff. And I go to visitation and you visit for like 2 hours at the maximum security. I would drive like 3 hours to him, visit for like 2 hours, and then you have to get back on the road and drive back home. Well, driving back home when you're trying to get to that interstate, by the time you're on your way back, traffic is piled up. So it takes forever to get home. You don't know if it's going to take you 2 hours, 3 hours, or whatever. So sometimes it was even all the way up until like 7 o'clock that night, and I'm still not home. And all of that for a 2 hour visit. But when you love someone, that's you do anything. If you can get to that person, think about that person you love. If there was any way you can get to them, wouldn't you try? When you do it, when you sacrifice to do it. So get back home. Sometimes I had an hour before it was time to return back to work. Sometimes I had a couple hours. Randomly, I would have the night off. And it was like on my way back home, it was so hard to get home. Like I was pulling over to every gas station, taking 5 minute naps, which is very dangerous, but that's how it was. And this was my life. Like this was crazy. I was burning both ends of the candle. It was only a matter of time before that fell apart. I couldn't do that juggling act too much longer. And I didn't have to do it too much longer because the shutdown happened. And I was in school and I was in my last classes. I was supposed to graduate. And later they ended up, they put us out of school. They turned everything to online and they put the kids out of school. My daughter was she goes to college with me. We're actually college buddies. And they put her out of school. And my nephew, I would have to help him, with his virtual learning. And I had my own learning. So the first half of the week, I would make sure I get my homework out the way. And then the last half of the week, I had to like help him with virtual work like all day for the rest of the week. And then I had my other little nephew that would be all over my back. I'd be dead tired. I wake up to him on my back, and it was just, it was a lot better, and I was getting a lot more sleep. And it was finally the breath that I needed. I know that is not the case for a lot of people during this season, but for me, it kind of worked out because this was the first time I was able to give my aching body a rest, to not have to push through going to work and you're in pure pain, and to not have to, be sleeping in the car. I didn't have to sleep in my car no more. I didn't have to sleep in a chair anymore. So you know. But all in all, they ended up canceling graduation, this graduation that I imagined for years. They canceled it. And I won't get my stage walk, but, There's a lot of other things going on in life, but that is kind of a blow. But you gotta look at the bigger picture. So I won't get my stage walk. And I ended up not being able to. They gave us the choice to drop the class and retake it in summer. And I did not want to do that. But I knew he needed to pass his classes. My nephew needed to pass his classes. And that was more important than me. So I ended up repeating that class. I passed the internship, and I had another class. I passed those two things, but I had to repeat the last class that I needed to graduate. And that's where we are now. Just a couple of weeks ago, I passed that last class and I received my degree finally in graphic design. That was drawing my life. My life is long because I'm old, y'all. A lot of years, a lot of tears, a lot of laughs, and a lot of, joy. It's all mixed together. And this is a new chapter. I don't know where this chapter is going, but I hope this chapter, somewhere in it, he's coming home. And somewhere in it, I will have some small success. And I don't need a lot. I really don't. But some sort of success. And we just, I continue to just be grateful and thankful for everything that I have. Continue to try to make my mother proud. Hopefully she's looking down and proud of me. And continue to make my dad proud. My dad, he's a great man. And that's all I can do. All right, thank you for bearing with me forever for this long story. But it was worth it because look, it took me the last 2 to 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks, to illustrate all these pictures. So hopefully I get a couple views so that it was, worth the time. Thank you guys. It's your girl Cadillac.
It's your girl Cadillac.